Welcome to the AgEmerge podcast, brought to you by Ag Solutions Network. Your farming challenges are unique, so your practices should be too. We're here to share emerging ideas, build connections, and provoke conversation.
Get ready to improve your soil, your crops, your livestock, and your family's livelihood. I'm your producer, Kim Chase.
And I'm your host, Monty Bottens. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for joining us. Today we welcome Dan Kittredge. Dan has been an organic farmer for more than 30 years and the founder and executive director of the Bionutrient Food Association, a nonprofit whose mission is to increase quality in the food supply. Dan has become one of the leading proponents of nutrient density and works to demonstrate the connections between soil health, plant health, and human health through workshops and speaking engagements across the country and globe. Today, he and Monty discuss those opportunities and challenges in all of these areas. So let's jump right in.
Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the AgEmerge podcast. I'm blessed to be joined by Dan Kittredge today. Thank you so much for being here, Dan.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Dan, what I love to do with all of our guests is just dive right in and if you would, just share your story, a little bit of your background and where you've come from and how you've gotten to where you are today.
All right. Well, I grew up on an organic farm here in Massachusetts, and my parents, for their day job, ran the local organic farming organization called NOFA for about 35 years. So I was actively part of not just the lifestyle, but the movement, the organizing, the conferences, the certification, stuff like that. Basically after college in my 20s, managed a farm in the summertime and traveled the world in the winter and did some interesting things. But when I got married and had found no better lifestyle to raise kids than I thought than the homestead, I tried to make a go of it myself and rapidly realized that I couldn't make a living doing it, in a significantly large part because my plants were susceptible to insect pressure and disease pressure and things like that, which are different people have different techniques for. But my thought was, if organic was supposed to be better, then shouldn't my crops be like the plants in nature that aren't being eaten by pests and disease? Wouldn't it be easier to make a living if my plants were healthy? I consider being eaten alive by a flesh-eating fungus a sign of poor health, or being eaten alive by a larvae a sign of poor health. I think that's maybe one of the foundational insights and humilities I had to have to go forward. So I started going to conferences and reading books and attending seminars and in the wintertime and practicing, changing techniques in the summertime, and got to a point pretty quickly where I could, where pests and disease were not attacking my crops anymore. My cost of production went down and my economic viability went up, and I was able to make a living working part-time and have time for the kids and quality of life. And I thought, boy, if I have 20 years of experience and didn't know a lot of these things, maybe other people don't know them either. Just basically how to work with life, with microbes, with the whole biological system, how do plants grow, how have plants been able to take care of themselves for 300 million years or whatever, before the invention of fertilizer. So started giving workshops, courses, turned into an organization, educational nonprofit called the Bionutrient Food Association, started in 2010. Worked with growers in lots of different climate zones and different crop types, different scales. Sure looked like it worked across the board, and thought maybe if working more well with nature means you're better profitability as a farmer and better shelf life, flavor, aroma, nutritive value, soil health, maybe if that's true, then maybe that's something we should be trying to get to be happening on a broader scale. And the question was, how do you realistically engage transition? And the thought was using money, using economic incentive. If the farmer gets paid a premium because their crop's more nutritious, and it's also caused the soil to be healthier and things like that, then maybe we could really accomplish some significant change. And so started in 2016 with this sort of concept of a handheld spectrometer that we can take and flash a light at wheat berries or a carrot or zucchini or milk, and by reading the light that bounces back, you can see this is in the 20th percentile of what a carrot could be, or this is the 80th percentile of what a carrot could be, because in actual fact, how food is produced has a lot to do with what's in it. And there's very significant variation in nutritional caliber in food. You know, the USDA label on a bag of carrots says all carrots have this much vitamin D, but you know, it's not number 2 plastic. You know, it's not like it's a fairly uniform thing. Actually, food is a very complex thing that's got these hundreds and thousands of different nutrients and compounds at different levels and ratios, and those variances affect our health. They really have a significant effect. So we built the meter, built a couple labs to try to calibrate that meter so we could have it give readings that were based on, you know, real data, because right now it looks like there's not a good database anywhere globally that defines that variation in food. And then also worked with growers to document their management practices and fertility programs, cultivars, climate dynamics, so we could connect management practices, soil metrics, soil carbon, soil biological activity, and nutrient variation. So at this point, we've got a handheld, calibrated, open source, consumer priced meter out there around the world. Yeah, going forward, it's only calibrated to 10 crops right now, and not particularly well on some of them, but step by step. So it's a short background, but hopefully.
Well, we're certainly going to dive into that variation and the meter and all those kind of things, but I do want to talk a little bit about, you know, your own experience when you were farming and you saw these pests and disease, and you had that aha moment of looking at nature, probably maybe the tree line or hedge line or forest or whatever, or natural prairie ground next to where you're farming, and realizing, that's not barren, devoid, and eaten and diseased and dead. What's going on, right? Is that kind of that aha moment? And then you said a conference that you went to. Who was some of the people that challenged you at that conference? You probably remember, I bet.
Yeah, well, the actual story of what really made it click in my mind was our old farm dog had gotten driven over his rear end by a customer and got his hide ground into the driveway, and he had a cut, and he was sitting out there, and there was some flies that had laid eggs, and the cut and the maggots had hatched, and they were eating the flesh. And I was like, oh my God, this is a horrible.
There's nothing more disgusting. I've seen it with calves, and yeah.
And so I was going out to get Colorado potato beetles off the potato plants, and I'm like, there's larvae eating my dog alive, and that's a big old something's really, really wrong. And there's larvae eating my potato plants alive, and that's like totally normal. And I was like, just because it's normal, does that make it okay? Is it okay for plants to be eaten alive by larvae? That's not a sign of health in nature. That was what the aha was. It was that visceral. And yeah. And then, so anyways, it was Acres USA. It was where I learned so much. Gary Zimmer, Jerry Brunetti, Dan Scow, Arden Anderson, Phil Wheeler, Bruce Tanio, just a whole suite of elders. I mean, just a real, for anybody who doesn't know about Acres USA, I think, their lineage, everything Charles Walters did there for 40 years or whatever until he passed was really impressive. And really, I think, integrated the insight from the permaculture community, the conventional ag community, the biodynamic community, the organic community. There was no, they were talking about energy and harmonics and frequencies and structuring water. It was all, bring it on, microbiome. Let's just let everybody who's got something to say have a space to say, and let's try it out. And I found that to be a very, very fruitful learning environment, and brilliant people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
No, there's some outstanding resources there, but that is a great aha moment. And you're right. Why do we just accept that we have some pests and some things, and don't realize that, yeah, you've probably got a sugar content problem. You've got maybe a imbalance of nutrients. You've got the harmonic resonance thing, and and natural vibration.
All the same thing. It's all the same. Every one of those
They're
nutrients
all-
vibrates.
That's correct. It's just how are we measuring it, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
that's when you break down the silos. And a friend of mine says, "Get out your tinfoil hat and get ready for this." So, but yeah, so that really led you on to some things. And just describe how did farming change for you then once you kind of worked with nature instead of tried to dominate it? I mean, it was a big relief, you said, right?
Well, my potato plants got killed by frost instead of by potato bugs. My cucumber plants got killed by frost instead of powdery mildew. Little stuff like that.
Little stuff, yeah. Actually got a
you
crop.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, you got much more production and less effort and better quality. I mean, the cucumbers, instead of getting pinched at the end after a few weeks, they were staying perfect shape after 3 months. Like that's unheard of in my experience. I was like,
Right.
Oh my God, this is not my third planting of cucumbers. This is my first planting of cucumbers I'm picking here in the end of September, and they're still perfect. It was just as stupendous for me. So
Yeah, and conventional production, especially for pickles, you've got like a 3-day harvest window and then you're done. And that's interesting to see that continue on. But well, so that leads right into, Dan, nutrient density, right? And the plant health and making a fruit all the time until you can't anymore. Nutrient density, what is it? How do you define it?
I like to say, anybody who thinks they have a definition, please come tell me, because I'm pretty sure I don't know.
And you run the organization that's defining it. Come on.
Which is exactly the point, is we don't know yet. And so we should stop throwing the word around with such confidence if we are, and say it's a process of learning and understanding. And when we've got it figured out, it's going to be a collective thing. And it's a continuum. So what can we say about nutrient density? If it doesn't correlate to plant health and flavor and aroma, we probably have a wrong definition. It's a continuum, not a binary. So if you're organic, you're either organic or you're not organic, or you're whatever, like my understanding is some carrots are really crappy, some carrots are really amazing, and there's a bunch in the middle. And so our thought is nutrient density is we can say this carrot's in the 20th percentile of what a carrot could be, this carrot's in the 40th percentile, this carrot's in the 80th percentile. So it's not you are nutrient dense or you're not nutrient dense, it's the continuum. And so being able to use that meter and get a reading and say, I got 3 bags of carrots on the shelf to choose from, 3 different, brands or whatever, and one's a 20, one's a 40, one's an 80. That's just data I can make decisions about. But it's not like saying one's nutrient dense and one's not nutrient dense. So I think that's a really big piece of it, is that it's a continuum, not a binary, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And I know you're still in the preliminary stages and probably will be for some time, but what are some of the things that you're seeing that is driving that 20th, 40th, 60th? So I think some of these include distance, right? Freshness, and those kind of things. Or what are things that you're seeing? And obviously the production practices, but what are you seeing that correlates to that percentile?
Yeah, I mean, again, am I speaking formally on the record? This is the answer, or like it sure looks like this? We're heading in this direction.
It sure looks like this.
Yeah.
We understand that this is
Yeah. So I mean, I want to go back to about nutrient variation and nutrient density, and just make a deeper point. But I'll answer your question first.
Sure.
If you pick a cucumber and it's an 80 when you pick it, a week later it may be a 70 or 65. But if you pick a cucumber and it's a 20 when you pick it, a week later it's going to be a 10. So sure, time and distance have some effect, shipping and all that kind of stuff. But how about if it's wheat or oats? They don't necessarily degrade very fast over time. So if you pick your blueberries when they're ripe and you freeze them, then most of those things are still in there 4 months later when you take them out of the freezer, versus you pick up a blueberry and then you ship it for a week and a half and then you get it. So in many cases, actually what we used to do in the olden days, which was, process things when they were ripe and eat them later, is actually better than eating things fresh. But yeah, primarily it's the management practices. To a decent degree, there's a cultivar component. So different varieties have different inherent capacities to be better or worse, but there's a range within every variety. We found that. But organic matter, biological health. The more well-functioning the microbiome is, the more organic matter you've got. It's all those basic things. How are you going to go about doing that? Are you doing shallow till, no till? Are you doing cover crops? You doing a burn down? I mean, there's things that you do that are beneficial, things that are detrimental, and you minimize the detrimental things and maximize the beneficial things. So it's not any one thing per se. It's really about the overall function of life. And it sure looks like that complexity of compounds that we're calling a high level of nutrient density only happens when you've got life functioning to a high degree. It needs air to drink, it needs water to breathe, it needs food to eat, it needs to be there. So yeah, I think it's all sort of common sense, but there's no obvious silver bullet. It's really about just good practices will get you from a 60 to an 80. And if most people are growing 20s, then you should be able to get a premium for your 60 and a bigger premium for your 80. That's our thought. And if consumers are out there picking stuff off the shelf, taking all the 80s off the shelf, and the 40s and 20s are sitting there, then maybe that buyer is going to focus on getting 80s next time instead of getting them all. So, just basic self-interest, basic economic self-interest, transparency. But to what we have defined nutrient density, or just to get into the numbers and the nutrients and things like that, I'll say, for the last 5 years or so, we've been doing this work with having growers record all their management practices, fertility program, cultivar, planting date. And then when they harvest the crop, we have them pull the soil, 2 depths of soil. They send the crop and the soil in. And we have been looking at about 15 different elements and a couple compounds. So like calcium and potassium and sulfur and zinc and polyphenols and antioxidants, those kinds of things. And we found the variations depending on the crop. Maybe carrots and calcium is 3 to 1. So 1 carrot has as much calcium as 3 carrots. That's the range we found. Maybe in iron and in spinach, it's 18 to 1. So 1 leaf of spinach here has as much iron as those 18 leaves of spinach. And then when it's polyphenols or antioxidants, maybe it's 25 to 1 or 50 to 1. Or more. So based on different elements, like you see a big range. And then, so we're able to say, okay, this carrot, we're going to look at these 8 things, and ones at the 60th percentile, one's at the 50th percentile, one's in the 40th percentile, one's at the 80th percentile. The average is out here about 60 or whatever, because it's not just one element. So that's what we're able to do right now, is to say, based on these 8 things, we call it BQI, this carrot's at the 60 or this carrot to the 40. But that's not really nutrient density, because it's just looking at these 8 things, and life is much more complex. So what we're doing now with beef, and we're hoping to do it in the future with more crops, is like 750 compounds. So way more families of compounds, enzymes, vitamins, proteins, amino acids, lipids, phenols, terpenoids, elements. Like, let's get a really good spectrum of different nutrients in there, and then see if we can find patterns and say, when these families of compounds are in these ratios, that's good. When they're in these ratios, that's bad. And be able to say, this is a good steak, this is a bad steak. We want to be able to get to that point of being able to say, this is good, this is bad, this is in the middle. And when we're there, I think we'll be able to say we know what nutrient density is. But right now, we're not there yet. We are in the process.
So this is a monster undertaking, and I bet you've gotten to where you think you've discovered it's even larger than maybe what you first thought when you started. Is that a fair assumption?
I think I knew it was pretty big. Yeah, and I think we're actually, we're starting to get there too,
Awesome.
Which is exciting. It is, everything we've done, we're a nonprofit educational organization. We're not a company. And so everything we've been doing is on donation money, not on investment money, because we want this information to be in the commons. We don't want to belong to a company and then have it get, whatever your polite word is for 10 sideways or whatever. Yeah. So our thought is, if we do it all the commons, it's all open, nobody can hide it. And we can come together around calibrating meters and market structure and things like that. So,
right.
It's a big project, and it's, I think, one whose time is coming or come. I think looking at the environment, looking at the climate, looking at human health, looking at cultural function, a lot of things are starting to get pretty squirrely. So people are ready for like something systemic, like, okay, so if I just buy better food for myself and my family, then we'll be healthier and the environment might be in better shape too. Okay, I can do that. And if we do it together, we can really start to turn things around pretty fast. It sure looks like.
We're taking a short break to share that the AgEmerge podcast is brought to you by the team at Ag Solutions Network. Rooted in innovation, ASN is committed to leaving the land better than we found it, not simply maintaining it. We're here to help you navigate the balancing act of productivity and building a legacy. From practices to products, ASN is more than a new jug. It's a new way of thinking. So don't be afraid to be different. Be afraid to be the same. Contact Ag Solutions Network today at asn.farm. And now back to our show.
Okay, let's jump right in there. What you said about the environment might be better. So I wanted to, you're doing the ground truthing essentially phase, right? With the 2 layered soil samples and then sampling the food. And, so that's truth to probably calibrate your sensor, right? But that's reality. So you're seeing, what are some of the things that you're consistently seeing contribute to making an 80th or a 90th percentile? Did I say that right? That's the upper 10%.
Yes, exactly.
Top 10% food. What are the practices that they're doing? So I imagine varieties are important. So having maybe older or more heritage varieties that are not as yield intense, because essentially when you get big yield, don't you just dilute the goodies for?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
No, you can have your cake and eat it too.
Okay.
You can have good yields of healthy plants. They don't just have to be good yields of not healthy plants. In fact, in my experience, depending on the environmental conditions, you can push the envelope here, push the envelope there, but I don't think it has to be one or the other. But it is important that if you've got varieties that have been bred to function on a chemistry, program, you're not going to be able to get those nutrients because it's the biology that brings nutrients in, not the chemistry. So, you want to have varieties that have been selected to work well with soil life, which in many cases is those heirloom, kind of varieties. But it's not that you couldn't hybridize it or something. But yeah, I think we had some really compelling data with oats and wheat. We did a bunch of samples in 2020 with oats and wheat. I don't remember if it was 70 farms or 60 farms across, I think it was 15 different states. And we had a bunch in Europe too. So 2 countries, two continents. And we have this really nice graph where it's like no-till, shallow till, deep till, more organic matter, less organic matter, less organic matter, more nutrients, less nutrients, less nutrients. So like really simple, how much do you disturb the soil? What's the organic matter level? What's the nutrient level? Like the less you disturb it, the more organic matter is there, the more nutrients are there. And that was across all kinds of different varieties, right? So we saw that across, didn't matter what the variety was. That was like a real simple one. So, but yeah, it's all about the management details. And the more you can do that regenerative thing and keep the life functioning well, the more things are going to look better.
So it's not this big convoluted thing. It's pretty simple, right? The higher the organic matter is, which means you've had a history of less tillage and or a history of, diverse crops, and the less that you till, those are kind of the 2 main things that you're contributing to.
That's an example of one simple one. I don't want to say it's just this or just that.
Well, no, I understand that, but that's just pretty straightforward on those 2 for sure. Anything else stand out in that study of correlations?
Well, that was oats and wheat. I'm pretty sure a lot of those people were cover cropping as well. So it wasn't like it was a, anhydrous and burn down no-till. It was a regenerative no-till, which is a really, really important point. We haven't even really properly processed all of our data yet. We've got 25 different crops, hundreds of different farms, with all these different metrics. And so, do we have enough varieties of this variety of carrot to overlay different soil types to be able to say it's a big puzzle. We've been collecting data really well. We haven't been digesting it because we just haven't had the time and money. We want to keep the process going. So we have, we can say, these are the variations, but really, I think teasing out the causal factors is something that hasn't really been done yet. to the degree we've done it, these are the things we've got. But it's if you've got a small vegetable operation that's, mulching and composting and things like that, they can have high organic matter, and that's not necessarily going to correlate with higher nutrient levels because of the other environmental conditions. Maybe not keeping the soil moist in a drought. Well, there's no water, all bets are off. Microbes aren't functioning. So I don't want to get too in the weeds, but I think
I wanted to go toward those weeds because I think here's the ultimate view of why the sensor and the technology you're working on so important, right? Organic is essentially a input or practice related restriction.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And everything that we've done is revolved around how we grow the animal. So, I mean, same way, let's say chickens. Okay. So you got free range. Okay. It means there's a door that they can walk outside, but they won't. Okay. They're, cage free. Well, they're still in a barn, but they're not
still in a big barn.
In a cage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's everything we've done is practice-based definitions, right? But that means nothing to the outcome, right?
Or very little. In most cases, very little. Yes.
Correct. There might be some, but thank you. There's very little. So what I think is amazing about what you're doing is like, okay, yes, we know you need to do these good soil health regenerative-based practices in order to have something that's good, but I'm going to actually give you the report card of how good you did, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to give that report card to the voter. And the voter is the buyer. And if all of a sudden you've got a truckload of carrots that's sitting in every store in a distribution center because there's no sell-through, all of a sudden you better figure out how to grow carrots a little better because you've got a distributor, a wholesaler, broker that are going to be hollering on, what do I do with this truckload of carrots that I can't move?
Yeah. And I mean, it's across the board. It's your milk, it's your eggs, it's your chicken, it's everything. Most of these crops are grown in a way that is that chemical monoculture, intense, destructive, not healthy kind of way. And a lot of the organic stuff is grown that way, right? So, it's I mean, it's exciting, and maybe some farmers feel a little bit threatened, but anybody who's doing a few good things is likely getting results that are a lot better than most people. So that's all I can say is, when the report card starts to come out, if you've got a 40, well, that's 40 out of 100. But if 60% of the supply chain is between 20 and 30, then you're on the top of the curve, right? So that's the thing, is like a 40, you're that's what you're at. You're at a 40, but you're also in the top 20th percentile of everybody out there. So heads up. Yeah.
But you made a really good point there about a lot of organic farmers, so large organic farmers, are simply conventional with organic inputs. There's no
nutrient levels are low.
Right.
And the nutrient levels are low.
And I contend that the way that we're growing crops in a conventional basis, but with very limited inputs and none of the nasty chemistries and those kind of things, we're likely producing a better crop. And I'd love to run it through the system to see than what maybe an organic or someone else is. And I think that we get away from these silos and we get to looking at the result, right? And
I've had this guy call in a couple of weeks ago from, I think he was in Oregon, or maybe I think it was Oregon, and he's like, I got 25,000 bushels of wheat, and it was 69.5 pound test weight. And I'm like, oh my God, that's pretty good, isn't it? He's like, yeah, that's pretty good. He's like, I want to get a premium for it. I want to know what's in it. And I'm like, great, send it over. So there's this other guy who's running a grain mill in I think Saskatchewan. He's like, I think we're doing some pretty good work here. We got our own. We can separate and silo. And I'm like, we want to know what's in our stuff and see if we can get premiums. Like, send it over. That's what the lab's for. Is for people that are doing a better job and maybe want to see where they're at and maybe want to tell other people where they're at if they like it, and then they can get a premium for it. We can do that for people right now. Not with the meter, just like it's a $150 if it's just a crop, or $200 if you want to get the soil in it with it also. But we've got a big enough data set that we can say you are here in the continuum, and then you can do whatever you want with that information. But there's kind of looking for better quality.
What crops are you doing that with now, Dan?
It's on our website. We've got, I think, 25 or 30 that we've got in the system right now. For people that are doing grain, it's only oats and wheat that we've got large supplies of, but we're doing corn. I think we're going to be doing that quite soon. I've been talking to people about, I think it's a Milo, or there's a couple other ones too, but yeah, oats and wheat for sure. Corn's coming along. It's just a question of, if you've only got 10 samples in the data set, then it's not a big enough one to say much. But if you got 250, then we can say some things. So yeah.
No, that's amazing. And I think
lots of fruits and vegetables though.
We're going to reach out to our customers and that are using our biologically based system and see if we can get some samples into you, because I'd really like to see what's going on there. And that'd be amazing.
Yeah, it's the Bionutrient Institute.org is the website. We have the Bionutrient.org, which is sort of like the education and communication and conferences and courses and chapters and stuff like that. But then all the science stuff is Bionutrient-Institute.org.
Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, we find out we've got this better food and we're able to eat it and we improved it. Does this really matter? Why is this important? I mean, aren't the skeptics going to say, you're chasing your tail? This is silly. What we're doing is fine.
Yeah. I mean, I don't try to convince people. I think enough people are convinced by life. If you eat a certain kind of food for long enough, how you start to feel. Maybe you've got kids or grandkids or a spouse that's not really doing that well. And at that point, it's no longer philosophical. It's visceral. Like, you want to be healthy. You don't want to be sick. You want your kids to be healthy. And you've tried enough different food in your life to see. And so we're just going to try to create a structure where people can see and be as honest as we can be. And if it works, it'll spread.
I love that answer, because it's completely a democratization of data, right? You're just making it available. And if people want to choose to participate and change their lives as a result of it, we have it here for you. If you think we're full of bunk, move on. So,
yeah, not trying to sell you on anything.
So that's fantastic. But to you personally, why is this important?
To me personally, because I think that how we engage with nature, with the land, is affects a lot of our life, and the environment around us, the imbalances in the environment, the toxins in the environment. Depending on where you go in the Midwest, you can't get a drink of fresh water, a clean water, right? It's just not an option. You can't go swimming in the ponds. Just a quality of life perspective, that's not really what it's about, but just like understand it's all connected. I think that when we eat food that doesn't have what our bodies need to function well, we start functioning less well. And if you do that for a couple generations, you start to have people it's not just physically not functioning well, it's spiritually, it's emotionally, it's, culturally. They don't have that much energy. They don't have that much creativity. They don't have that capacity to do and be. And so I look at, I guess I started when I was in my 20s and I was sort of, angry or judgmental or, whatever, looking at this is bad, and that's wrong. And, you look at the economic system, you look at the environment, you look at the educational system, you look at the political system, you look at the media system. We've got a lot of systems that are not healthy. And you want to fight one or you want to fight another one, you can do that. But I think the foundation for me is that all of those systems are made out of people. There's people that are in there, and to the degree that they're functioning at a higher level, those systems are going to function at a higher level. And the degree they're functioning at a lower level, the systems are going to function at a lower level. So my thought is, if we can make food better across the board for everybody globally, not just the US, like overall nutrient levels of food are higher, then people's level of coherence is going to be higher. Their health, their vitality, their spiritual attunement, their honor, their whatever all those things are, they're going to be more well-functioning people. And that is a way to systemically address a lot of the cultural imbalances that we've got. I think, yeah, that's why it's important to me, is I want to create a reality where people are actually in a better state to be better actors in the world. So, yeah.
And all of that starts by choosing the right food to put in your body. And,
you are what you eat.
And not only you have that compounding effect for you, but you're also having that cascading effect for everything that created that food for you.
Yeah.
So, and it's not an understatement that this nutrient density that we're pursuing, is directly in line with outstanding stewardship of all of the resources we have.
100%. Yeah.
This is why this is important, farmers. I know some of you have given me some grief about, why are you chasing this, Monty? This is, give me, what's the purpose of all this? We just want to know how to grow crops. We just want to be able to make more money. But at the end of the day, we have to make a product that is outstanding, because we're feeding people, and people are counting on us to give them the fuel that they need to live a great, balanced life. And
if you're a farmer that just wants to make money, I mean, that's not, it is not, don't bother talking to people that just want to make money. If they're people that want to feed people, if they're people that actually have some pride in the food they're producing, and that, I mean, then you can talk to people. If they actually care about the land that they steward, and they don't want it to be toxic, they want animals running around in the hedgerows. If you care about your land, if you care about what you're producing, then we can talk to you. If you just want to make money, don't even bother talking to people that just want to make money, I would say. And it's only if you got that. Yeah.
And we have to change that focus, right? Because the conventional minded world has caused us to be the profit at exclusion of, don't worry about the rest. If we do some other stuff, great. I think if we realign that to where we're doing what's best, and it happens to be profitable.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it may not be the penultimate profitability.
Yeah.
But it is profitable.
And we've got a lot of guys that are showing that their actual profit per acre is higher, even in some cases when their yields per acre are lower, because their cost of production is lower and their resilience in times of drought or flood is higher. We've got this perverse system going on with the subsidies and stuff like that. So you can make a living without growing a crop, which is, I mean, you got a problem with welfare. Let's talk about subsidies, kids. I mean, you got a problem with that? Let's have an honest conversation. I think a lot of farmers are they know the truth about that. But
we complain about welfare and we line up at the USDA office to take the handouts. So
yep. Yeah, you're getting a lot more dollars than that that one mother is.
That's true. Yeah. So I think it's a mindset thing, right? It's a mindset of how you approach it and how you think about stewardship. And I think that's interesting. So, okay,
I would just say,
go ahead.
I think there's not many farmers out there who don't care about their land. And I think there's not many farmers out there who don't care about the people that are eating their food and really want in their heart to be doing good for both. So, yeah.
Correct. I just think maybe we don't have a full awareness and appreciation of how strong that connection is between our practices and the health of people.
Yeah.
That's one thing I'd like to emphasize. So the sensor, we started this, you said, I believe in 2017. Tell us about that. What is it? How is it coming along? And obviously there's limitations, and those things always get better as time goes on. Yeah. Talk to us about this and the whole genesis and the iterations you've done of this so far.
Yeah, well, when we had this idea about building a meter and defining nutrient density and connecting it to management practices and having this all be one big open framework of sharing, and you own your data, so no one knows who you are, but you can see everybody else's data in anonymized in context, so you can see who did better and what they did and that whole thing. We're like, we're an educational organization. We're not a tech company. We don't do software. We don't do hardware. We don't know how to. And so we went out and found, some people who were aligned philosophically, but had those skills. And so Our-Sci it's now a company that we found. They were working at Michigan State. They had built this open source handheld sensor. It was for photosynthesis assessment for research in field. And we got some money and said, hey, would you, be interested in converting this into a nutrient sensor? And they said, great. And so by the end of 2017, we had built that first, I think we had two. Is this possible? Yes. Does it work? Yeah, it seems to work. And then we shipped them out. I don't know, a couple hundred of them. People wanted one. We're like, hey, it's not calibrated. It can't give you a reading as far as a number. It'll give you like a boop, boop, boop on a graph. But people are like, hey, I want one anyways. So we made a couple hundred of those and put them out there. And 2018, we built a lab and started testing crops. We tested carrots and spinach, and we had, I don't know, 1,000 samples or something from grocery stores and farms and farmers markets, and started building a data set to calibrate the meter with. So basically, every time a carrot came in or a leaf of spinach came in, we flashed a light at it in the lab with the meter, and then we put it through the lab. So we got the reading from the meter, and then we've got the calcium level, zinc level, phosphorus level, polyphenol level, and then you can do AI and algorithms and stuff with that. So 2019, we did 6 crops. We had a second lab at Chico State in California. We did 6 crops. 2020, added another lab in France and got up to 20, 21, 25 crops, something like that. We're working with growers. So last year, 2021, we released a second generation of the meter, which basically has like a little calibration thing. So you can set it to 0. And we have enough data from all the samples we went through the lab that it'll give you a reading on 10 different crops. So oat berries, wheat berries, zucchini, Swiss chard, carrots, lettuce, stuff like that, mustard greens, I think. So right now, if you take one, you flash a light at a leaf of Swiss chard, you'll get a reading back. It'll tell you this chard is here with polyphenols, here with BQI. If you flash a light at some wheat berries, same thing. So we've got a couple hundred of those out around the world right now. The second generation calibrated ones. I'm not sure if it's 250 or whatever it is. I think we're getting another 100 boards in right now. So we'll be able to. We've been back ordered. We've never marketed this thing. We're like, hey, it doesn't work very well. It's kind of janky. It takes 15 touches of the screen to get a reading because it's really not there yet. And it was like, I want one. So we've been back ordered forever, but we haven't been trying to manufacture them. We've been trying to get it to a point where it actually works, in some meaningful way. And so that's where we're at right now, is like, okay, it works in some meaningful way. Could we make it less janky? Could we make 1,000 or 10,000 of them instead of 100 or 200? And could we maybe have it calibrated for 20 crops instead of for 10 crops? And could we have a software function where if you've got 10 people in a city that each go to a different grocery store, and when they go once a week, they flash a light at everything in that grocery store, that gets automatically put into the web, where everybody from that city can see in that week where what was. So that's all totally plausible next year. That's what we're looking at, is next year being able to do that, have it be in thousands, maybe have it be maybe more than 10 crops, have the software, app user interface function where it doesn't take many people having one to have a lot of people have access to the data from it. But this is all still this is not nutrient density. This is just nutrient variation. This is still we're not telling you it's better. We're telling you it has higher levels of these things. Yeah.
So if you get it, I love the social sharing aspect of that. That is powerful, because then you've got basically a data set that's changing all the time, and you can constantly sample that. That's powerful.
The supply chain is changing all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're switching, field to field varies. And then the other thing that was interesting out of there, I just wonder, the leafy vegetables, I can see how that could sense that pretty easy. Carrot. Sensing a carrot, that has to be tough. And sensing a wheat berry, because you can't see the inside of a wheat berry. How is the sensor pulling that off? That's pretty amazing.
Well, the data we have from the lab is the data from the outside of the wheat berry, because that's what we did when we brought the wheat into the lab, was we flash flooded the outside and then we processed it and got the numbers. So it's just the algorithm. It's an algorithm from what the surface reflectance is to what the data from the lab is. Our best data actually is on wheat berries and oat berries. It's some of the best data we've got, like the strongest calibrations. And you just put like 10 of them in this little tray, or maybe 20 or 30, and yeah, flash a light and boom. It's with the carrot, it's hard because the sensors. So like, there's a couple things, like round things, like a carrot, you have to cut it. So you can't just go to the grocery store right now, at least with the calibration. If we have the next generation has like a little, like an elephant trunk that can come out around the carrot, then maybe we don't need to cut it. There's tons of logistics. We're doing fruits, roots, leaves, grains, like they all have different shapes and sizes and dynamics. And now we're starting to do meat, but that's on the nutrient density side, not on the nutrient variation side. It's a big project. And anybody that wants to support it, it's all charitable. It's all donations based, and we go as fast as we have money.
So I want to talk about that. First off,
no profit opportunity here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And for people who want to support it, absolutely, that's a fantastic opportunity. But I think a good way for farmers and our audience members to know the interest level in this is talk about the current funding you have for your organization. I mean, this isn't just an idea, right? This is you're a good sized organization, and there's a lot of people interested in this.
We've been doing about $1 million a year for a few years now. I mean, plus or minus, over or under, I think. But I think our budget for next year is like 5.5. I think we've gotten far enough now. We've been trying to get the work done. Don't talk about it too much until you got something to talk about. And so I think, we've been letting word of mouth spread it, but we haven't really been saying like, okay, we're ready to go out publicly now. And so we're at this point where we've got enough done that we know what needs to be done next. And there's no reason doing it over 3 years when we can do it over 1 year. So yeah, that's the ambition for this next year. But yeah, I mean, pulling in $1 million plus a year in charitable donations is a hassle in and of itself. So
right, but I mean, it speaks to the fact that people are interested in this. That's my point, and I think it's real. Yeah. So hopefully you can have a subscription model or some sort of way that people can support you through the app that you're using, because there is value in that, and we'll see how that happens. But there's a lot of other things we could visit about, and our time is coming close to an end here. But what are some other things that you'd like to visit about today while we still have an opportunity?
I don't know. We covered a bunch. Yeah, I mean, I generally like to have people who are listening ask questions, but that's not a possibility in this format. Yeah. They
can certainly reach out to you and connect to you via the website and those kind of things. But I think consider donating, considering following what you're up to, and getting these devices as they become available, and doing the right practices so that you're in that top 10%, and your food is flying off the shelf. And this is a great way then that you'll get rewarded for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole idea. I guess, just a couple of things I could say. Just I took a second to think about it there. I mean, one is that we have our annual conference, and anybody who's interested in this whole deeper conversation and process, it's an amazing community. To invite the broader community into this conversation about what is nutrient density, because, there's not really a lot of other groups out there doing it, right? There's not a lot of other groups out there sort of actively working on this conversation. We're kind of like the only ones out there, seriously. And that's not a good place to be. Right, you want to have a community coming together around this, different researchers, different organizations, different people actively engaged in this process of figuring out what nutrient density is. So that's going to be one of our big pushes in the next 6-8 months, is trying to hit as many conferences as possible and open up this conversation and say, here's where we're at, here's what we've got, what do you need, what would be priority for you, what do you think we should do, etc. So Yeah, I mean, it's a nice moment where we've got buzz and there's excitement and interest, and it's a little bit, we don't know what it is yet. So it's not like it's codified and it's ossified and stuff like that. It's like we have this moment where we can really come together around this definition. And I think the more people who are engaged in the process, the more ownership there is, the broader based it is, the stronger it'll be. So yeah.
No, that's excellent. And the thing I love about this is that it really hits all three things we're about on this form of communication with the AgEmerge podcast. Is first off, it's an ag technology, right? Where it's a technology that's telling us and quantifying what we're doing. It's in the regenerative space. It's it's doing, if you do better, farm more regeneratively, it's gonna pay. And the other thing is that it directly impacts farmers. So I mean, this is an amazing thing, and I wish you the best as you continue to explore and learn and iterate. There'll be multiple iterations, and someday I think our sensors on our phones are probably going to be adequate enough that we can have it built in to the phone itself. So
that's exactly the objective. My thought is, let Apple put a sensor in their phone, let Samsung put one in theirs, let Google put one in theirs, and let them all be calibrated to this definition of quality.
Yeah.
I mean, our job is not to build meters. We're an educational organization. We're doing it right now because somebody has to show that people are interested in it and build the ecosystem around it. But then once you build the ecosystem around it, there's going to be competition in the space. Great. Let everybody build a meter, but just let them all be calibrated to this collective definition of what nutrient density is. So
when you've got this all figured out in the next year, right? What's next?
I haven't answered that question. I do consider this to be my first half of my career, but I'm getting old enough that I'm like better hurry up and get it over with. No, I think the real end game is us remembering that our own bodies are actually the most sophisticated sensors we're ever going to have. They're really profound, and you shouldn't need a meter, right? You shouldn't need a meter, and it's about enjoying life and having your life be full and rich and good. And I think the physical food you eat is one thing that certainly affects you, but the conversations, the relationships, the media, the community, your thoughts, all these really affect our overall well-being and our experience of life. So there's something there that I think is important that I'd love to get to once we have food better for everyone. But yeah, I'm a farmer. I grew up on the land. I think people belong in nature. I think we don't belong in boxes doing jobs in urban environments. I really don't think we belong there, and I don't think we're going to be healthy or succeed. I think we need to figure out how to get back into communities, towns, property. I think there's something really important there. But yeah, one thing at a time.
Very well said. I appreciate that. I appreciate all your leadership on pushing and really innovating in an area that no one else is, and looking at a very hard, very complex issue that nobody really there's a lot of people want the fight financially, don't want the answer to this. So I mean, you're swimming upstream, and thank you for all that you're doing to make this possible. So I really appreciate it. We'll stay in touch, and if you ever find yourself in the Chicago area or Iowa area, please stop by. You're always welcome.
All right.
Thank you so much, Dan. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
What a great conversation. It's exciting to continue learning and understanding the complexity of food and the connections between soil health, plant health, and human health. There's certainly many more questions to answer and explore. And have you got your own follow-up question for a podcast guest? Well, click on the link in the podcast email to fill out the question form. And as always, if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing to help growers implement soil health, check out our website at asn.farm, and there you can click on links to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. There's a lot of great things happening and always something to learn. Thanks for listening.